The offseason is nearly over and real football is just days away, but you should still be looking for ways to improve your dynasty team. So today we're talking about the 5 players that I am most interested in adding to my teams prior to week 1. My name is Paul, this is Pure Potential. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment. Let's go. All right, before we get into the players today, I wanted to let you guys know I am giving away 5 all-in subscriptions to fantasypoints.com. Each of those is a $420 value, and as the name implies, that gets you access to everything that the site has to offer. All written NFL and college football content, the incredible Fantasy Points data suite, their DFS optimizer, and the brand new Ball Knowledge AI tool. If you're interested in entering that giveaway, just stick around. We're going to go over the details a little bit later on in this video. For now, though, let's get into these buys, and keep in mind as I go over specific trade scenarios that I am working with a default assumption of 12-team Superflex PPR tight end premium. So if your league's different, you just got to mentally adjust some of these player values, some of these trade offers that I'm floating. But we're going to start with the most valuable player that I want to talk about today, and that is Drake May, who on fantasycalc.com is ranked as the QB7, the 21st overall player. And I've talked about Drake May in the past, but a lot of this offseason has been spent discussing those round 4 and round 5 quarterbacks, guys like Trevor Lawrence, JJ McCarthy, Brock Purdy, guys that I think are really good values in startups, but I don't know if any of them have the same type of upside. I think May is one of those players that has a chance to be almost unobtainable in a couple of months. As a rookie, Drake May showed off his mobility, and this tweet from the Fantasy Points data suite really sums it up. You look at the quarterback leaders in scramble yards per game from 2024. You have Jaden Daniels first at 36.1 and Drake May second at 31.3, ahead of Jalen Hurts, ahead of Lamar Jackson. The issue with May, the reason why that didn't show up quite as much as you'd think, is that he had almost no designed rushing production, whereas Daniels, Hurts, and Lamar all had at least 3 points per game in designed rushes. I think we're going to see more designed runs from May this year under a new coaching staff. He is very athletic. He clearly has a tendency to run, and I think he's going to keep improving as a passer as well. I thought he was really impressive as a rookie throwing the football, even though the box score doesn't look incredible, and he just turned 23 a couple of days ago. So I think at his age, being an early declare, what he showed us in college, what he did last year in a bad situation, I think we should expect some natural progression helped along by an improved supporting cast. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Patriots are going to smash this year offensively. They still have some major weaknesses, but their offensive personnel is much, much better than last year, at least on paper. Okay, they add Will Campbell in the first round, top 5 pick to the O-line, along with Morgan Moses, who they got in free agency. They add Trevion Henderson, a dynamic receiver and big play threat out of the backfield, add some explosiveness that they were desperately missing last year. Then they bring in Stephon Diggs. They bring in Kyle Williams to the passing game to add to Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, who's kind of a surprise standout, probably going to start the year at X receiver. I think this group is at least functional. Like last year was bottom of the barrel bad. This team could be the 20th best offense in the league, maybe the 16th best offense in the league, depending on how much May can develop. And that is a big improvement from what we saw last year. Now, if you're trying to acquire Drake May, there's a lot of different ways you can go about that, but I'm going to make a few specific trade suggestions, and I'll do this for each player as well, because it's really easy to say, go buy a player. It's a little bit harder to put together actual trade offers that represent how you value the player. So these are offers that I would personally send if I had these players on my team and I wanted to get a little more exposure to Drake May. The first option is a simple pivot. There are 2 quarterbacks that are ranked pretty closely to Drake May on Fantasy Calc and other dynasty ranking services where I'd prefer to have May. I would send Caleb Williams or Bo Nix straight up for Drake May. I think there's reasons to be excited about all 3 of these quarterbacks. Not saying they're bad players. I'm not saying they're clear sells for me, but I do think that May has the best chance of that group to jump into the top tier of dynasty quarterbacks. If he can put it all together with the passing, with the rushing, I think he has the highest ceiling of this group. Alternatively, you could look to tier up from a quarterback like Dak, Goff, or Penix. I'd be comfortable sending a first on top of these players if you can get Drake May. I'm always cautious about trading firsts, but Drake May is exactly the type of scarce, high upside player that I think is worth the risk in this case. And then maybe if you have some of these young borderline elite wide receivers like Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, or Garrett Wilson, you can add a little plus on top of those guys to go and get Drake May. This type of trade is obviously going to depend on your roster construction, whether you have a surplus at wide receiver or whether you even need a quarterback in the first place. But I do think that Drake May has the more favorable range of outcomes in his dynasty value compared to these wide receivers. Okay, the next guy I want to talk about today is Courtland Sutton, 91st overall, wide receiver 37 on Fantasy Calc. Not a guy that's really been on my radar for much of the offseason. He just kind of slipped through the cracks for me as I, paid attention to maybe flashier options. But when you dig a little deeper, he actually had a really impressive 2024 season. You compare him to Terry McLaurin, who has a lot more brand equity right now, it feels like, than Courtland Sutton. They had almost the exact same season. Both of them played 17 games. They ran virtually the same number of routes. McLaurin had 82 catches for 1,096 yards. Sutton had 81 catches for 1,081 yards. Touchdown numbers were not the same. Pretty much everything else was. And Ryan Heath, whose analysis really put me onto this Courtland Sutton thing in the first place, he pointed out that Nix really improved in his highly accurate throw rate over the course of the season. Bo Nix ranked 33rd in the first 9 weeks, so worse than the worst starting quarterback in the league in highly accurate throw rate through the first 9 games. But from week 10 on, he was second best in the NFL in highly accurate throw rate. During that span, Courtland Sutton scored 17.4 points per game. That's like solidly in wide receiver 1 territory. His per out numbers over that stretch, 28% targets per out run, 2.48 yards per out run. That's right in line with guys like Mike Evans, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's alpha wide receiver stuff. And it's not insane to think that he could replicate that in 2025 or at least come pretty close, especially if we see any regression from the Broncos defense. Right? It's hard for a defense to be as good as they were last year, year over year. That could lead to some more pass attempts. Or just Bo Nix continuing to improve a little bit in year 2. Maybe I'm late to the party here, but Courtland Sutton is starting to stand out to me as an awesome trade target for contenders. So if you have a need at wide receiver, if you're a little shallow at that position, maybe you're relying on a rookie to contribute for you in week 1. You don't know what to do about Jaden Higgins in your wide receiver 3 spot. These are some options for you. These aren't going to get it done in every league, but they're a good starting point. And I'll start by suggesting a simple trade of draft picks. If you're a prospective playoff team, see if you can just send your 2nd and 3rd round rookie pick for Courtland Sutton. If the team that has him is planning to start him in week 1, it's probably a no-go. But if he's just hanging around on kind of a middling roster, maybe that's the type of trade that sort of wakes up a manager and says, yeah, it's probably time for me to rebuild. Here's Courtland Sutton at a very reasonable price. Another thing you can try to do is tier down. I have DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, and Terry McLaurin all ranked slightly ahead of Courtland Sutton, but I think the market views this as a larger gap than I do. So if I've got one of these players, I'd be happy to tier down to Sutton from any of these guys for ideally a 2nd round pick on top, but even a 2-3 swap. I'd happily send McLaurin and a 3rd for Sutton in a 2nd. I think you are basically just free rolling that extra value at that point. And then the final suggestion I'd make is tiering up. If you have a wide receiver like Keon Coleman, Jacoby Myers, Khalil Shakir, Chris Godwin, either players that maybe aren't going to contribute a whole lot early in the season, like Chris Godwin, like Keon Coleman, or guys that just have lower ceilings overall, production ceilings in Jacoby Myers and Khalil Shakir, if you can move up from these guys to Sutton for really anything less than a 2nd, I think that's a great move to potentially get you into a higher tier of production. Next, let's talk about Luther Burden, 98th overall, wide receiver 39, ranked very closely to Sutton in the overall Fantasy Calc rankings. In fairness, Luther Burden might be an even better trade target after week 1 or after week 2 because I don't expect him to run more than 30 to 40% of the routes these first couple of games. It looks like Olamide Zaccheaus is going to run ahead of him to start the year. But I want to put him on your radar, and I still want to send out offers now on the off chance that he does make a splash play or two in one of these early games, or maybe just gets more run than we expect. Because Luther Burden is a guy we should be excited about. He was a 5-star recruit in college with one of the best peak seasons in this 2025 rookie class. In 2023, as a sophomore, 3.5 yards per out run, 35.5% of his team's receiving yards. He had a ridiculous 8.7 yards after catch per reception, and I believe he led the nation in missed tackles forced. He's a crazy threat with the ball in his hands. He has the production to back it up. He did take a step back in his senior season, and that's why he fell to the second round of the draft at all. But I do think we should care more about the peaks than the valleys here, especially when the draft capital signals that the NFL isn't too worried about that regression. Like, he was still a top 40 pick. And it helps that he goes to a creative play caller in Ben Johnson who can maximize what he does do well. So I just think Burden has the type of ceiling that we need to be chasing in Dynasty. Obviously, he does not have the highest floor of the players that are ranked around him. I just think the ceiling matters a lot more, especially in the current market where most young wide receiver talent is priced through the roof, even pre-breakout a lot of the time. You look at Emeka Egbuka's price. I just took him in the mid-4th round of a startup, and I feel fine about it. But that's where we're at with most young wide receiver prices. You don't have to pay that for Luther Burden because of the crowded situation he's in, because his week 1 role is unclear. But the thing is, none of that stuff matters. All that actually matters is whether that 2023 season at Missouri was legit. If he's that player that we saw in 2023, the current target competition is inconsequential. The cream is going to rise to the top. So I think all the other stuff is just noise, and it really comes down to a talent evaluation. I'm still pretty in on the talent of Luther Burden. As far as trades, I think there's a lot of great options. If you go to the Fantasy Calc trade database and just look up trades that have involved Luther Burden over the past couple of weeks, there are a ton of favorable deals. Like, I wanted the Burden side in most of those trades, so I'd recommend checking those out. But here are a few suggestions. One would be pivoting from a running back. Pivot from a running back to a wide receiver. Maybe take advantage of the week 1 brain. There's some managers at this time of the year, they're just looking at the projected points on Sleeper. That is how they are valuing players. If you can trade a player like Pacheco, Swift, Pollard, Montgomery for Luther Burden, a team that is a little bit light at running back, they have some extra wide receivers, they really, really want to get that win in week 1, so they go for the player that has the locked-in role now. Maybe you have to add a little plus on top. I'm totally fine with that because I have Burden ranked well ahead of all these guys. Then there are also some wide receivers that you could pivot from, and I'd swap any of these guys for Luther Burden on pretty much any team. Jerry Jeudy, Keon Coleman, Calvin Ridley, Brandon Ayuk. Some of these are immediate production bets. Some of these are different breakout candidates like Keon Coleman, where I would just rather re-roll on a Luther Burden. But either way, they're all ranked closely to him. I've seen trades involving these players. I'm sending them away for Luther Burden. And then the last option would be sending draft picks. Now, a single 2026 second is pretty unlikely to get it done because Burden was an early second round pick. But if you can send a future second plus a player on your bench, somebody like Marvin Mims or Isaac Tesla or J.K. Dobbins, that type of an asset on top of a second, that could work. Especially if the person who drafted Burden is maybe a little bit impatient or frustrated that he hasn't been able to lock down a larger role so far. All right, if you've watched this far, you deserve the opportunity to win that all-in subscription to Fantasy Points. So big shout out to Thomas Tipple and everybody over at Fantasy Points for setting this up. The only thing that you need to do to enter this giveaway is leave a comment below this video letting me know what you are most excited to see in week 1. Is it the new look Bears offense with Ben Johnson? Is it Ashton Genty making his debut with the Raiders? Is it something else? Let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, if you want to subscribe to the channel or like the video, that would be cool too. But I will be randomly picking 5 of those comments on Thursday morning, and I will reply letting you know that you've won. So make sure that your notifications are on, or check back on your comment around noon on Thursday to see if you've won a Fantasy Points all-in subscription. Now let's get back to the buys with Tony Pollard. 111th overall player, running back 29 on Fantasy Calc. Pollard got a ton of volume in 2024 and struggled to do a whole lot with it because the Titans offense was in shambles. And then this offseason, it looked like he was set for maybe more of an even split with Tyjae Spears, but he becomes the beneficiary of what is apparently a pretty severe high ankle sprain for Tyjae Spears because Spears was placed on IR. He's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season, and we don't know how healthy he's going to be upon his return even. This is the type of injury that can linger for running backs, and Spears has had a history at this point of having these nagging injuries. So you look at Pollard now, age 28, enters the year as the clear bell cow starter for what should be a much improved offense. And Pollard wasn't all bad last year. He ranked 6th out of 46 running backs with over 100 carries in yards after contact per attempt. Much of his woes came before contact. He ranked 37th out of 46 in yards before contact per attempt. The offensive line in Tennessee should be much improved. The quarterback situation could be exponentially better with Cam Ward under center as opposed to Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. I think there's going to be more touchdown opportunities for this team. Pollard just looks like that perfect running back target right now if you need a guy that you can play early in the season. The backups on this team are Julius Chestnut and Kalel Mullings. Neither of these guys are a threat to take any receiving work away, which was one of the big concerns with Tajay Spears. So I think we're going to expect Pollard to be a total workhorse for at least those first 4 games of the season. He's going to dominate all of the high value touches, the passing game work, the goal line work, and who knows how long it's going to take Spears to get up to speed once he's activated. Now, looking into trades for Tony Pollard, even over the last week, there are a lot of deals in the database where Tony Pollard is being moved straight up for a future second or like a second and a 4th round pick. This is a great price to pay if you need early season running back help. If you have like a hero RB or 0 RB type of team right now, and you need a guy that's going to get 15 to 20 touches a game early in the year, that is a very palatable price to pay. I'm happy to pay it in spots where I need that type of running back. Another option is pivoting off of wide receivers. I hate to bring this guy up over and over and over again. I just think he's really mispriced. I'd happily trade away Keon Coleman for Tony Pollard, Jacoby Myers, Khalil Shakir, Chris Godwin. I'm not saying you have to make that swap in every team situation. I'm just saying if you have a need at running back, these are guys that I would view as expendable to accomplish that goal. And then some pivots at running back and tight end, just based on who is ranked near Pollard on Fantasy Calc. I'm fine with sending away David Montgomery or Zach Charbonnet. I'd also send away Kyle Pitts or Evan Ingram, which is definitely going to be more doable in tight end premium than in non-tight end premium. But I think there's a lot of players in that sort of mid-second round value range that you could send for a Tony Pollard, and again, should be a useful player for you early in the year. All right, the last player today is Jalen Coker, 173rd overall, wide receiver 65 on Fantasy Calc. I promise I'm not hopping on a bandwagon here. I called out Jalen Coker as a late round target in my startup guide all the way back in February of this year. The reason I'm bringing him up again is that I don't think it's too late to buy. I was pretty devastated when Jalen Coker landed on IR, but it could be a blessing in disguise because it really cut the hype train short. It felt like Coker was going to the moon. You know, he was supposed to be the slot wide receiver for the Panthers, and then he gets put on IR kind of out of nowhere, and the talk about him has really died down. But I think we should be excited about Coker. We've had a lot of positive coach speak about him the last few weeks. He showed out in the NFL preseason, and he's expected to take over that slot role that Adam Thielen vacated. That is what the GM said. According to the Fantasy Points data suite, Jalen Coker ran 114 routes from the slot in games that Bryce Young played, and he came through with really solid results: 18% targets per route run, 2.04 yards per route run. That's awesome stuff, especially for an undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver. Overall, his rookie year was much more impressive to me than Xavier Legette's, despite the difference in draft capital between the two, despite the team investment in Legette wanting to get him involved. Jalen Coker finished with just 20 fewer receiving yards, despite playing in 5 fewer games and running about 130 less routes than Xavier Legette. I think he's pretty obviously the better player. And looking at the rest of this team, I see no reason why Jalen Coker can't be the second target in this offense behind Tet McMillan. Outside of Legette, the other pass catchers on this team are Hunter Renfrow, Jimmy Horn, and JT Sanders. Like, this should be a pretty valuable role for a team that projects to be about middle of the pack in terms of passing volume. And if Bryce Young takes another step forward, then Coker has, I think, a ton of upside. So in the interest of acquiring more Jalen Coker shares, I would gladly pivot off of Xavier Legette, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Knoll, Marvin Mims in like a 1-for-1 trade scenario. Get a plus if you can. I think they're all ranked ahead of him, but I would make the swap straight up personally. I'd also happily tear down from Keon Coleman. I'm sorry, I had to mention him again. And Chris Godwin. I'm just a little bit worried about his outlook for really the whole season at this point. Like we don't know how many games he's going to miss because of this ankle injury that has lingered on. Emeka Egbuka is getting so many rave reviews. Godwin could be third in the pecking order by the time he gets back on the field. He's age 29 now. He'll be 30 next season. If I can tear down, get a young wide receiver I like with a plus on top, that's appealing to me. And then lastly, you could just look at some draft picks. Like in some leagues, you can probably toss a couple of third-round picks and get Jalen Coker. You could send a third plus a bench player like a Devin Neal or an Alec Pierce, an Amari Cooper. He's not going to be highly valued everywhere. Some people just had this guy on their bench and didn't really even think anything of it. So it's worth poking around, seeing if you can add him as a speculative bench piece, stash him in your IR spot. I do think when he gets back week 5, week 6, he could be taking over a pretty interesting role in the slot for Carolina. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, guys. As always, thanks so much for watching this video. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you haven't done it yet, go down to the bottom here, leave a comment about what you're excited to see in week 1 so you can be entered to win the all-in subscription to fantasypoints.com. While you're down there, go ahead and subscribe, like the video. And if you want more Dynasty content from me this NFL season, you can hit the plus sign on the subscribe button or the link in the description to get access to weekly live streams on YouTube, private channels in the Pure Potential Discord, and my top 250 Dynasty rankings that are going to be updated each and every week throughout the season. Either way, guys, I'll be back soon with another Dynasty video, and hopefully I'll see you then.